What do we think of the new music I found then? A little unsure myself. I figured I'd try something different. It's a little bit of a different blend, as you know, you used a lot of the same stuff last year, so I figured something a bit more summery. Feels a bit like someone just put the Beach Boys on fast, but what do I know for such things? Let's run that down. And we'll get rid of that. And we'll get rid of that as well. Just waiting for something to happen there, just because the encoding is going a bit funny. Let's hit the button. Hey, there we go. That's what we'd like. Excuse me. Great start. All things considered there. Just making sure things are working. Everything seems to be working, which is what we're after. There we go. Apologies for the slight delay there. Everything is all fun and games. What have we got there? Well hot, maybe even too hot. Too hot, way too hot to need to be in an ice rink. You're in an ice rink more than ever, so I don't know how your blood isn't essentially ice at this stage. Either way, folk are here, folk are talking. We do have folk in the chat and stuff like that. You can keep doing those ones. Either way, I think I've forgotten to get any water, but we'll figure that one out in a minute. Guys, gals, and the gender fluid and all beyond the binary, it is Wednesday night, it is 8 PM, and welcome back once again to the BOTW What's Current stream. My name is Anthony Russell, here to bring you back once again through the weird, wonderful and wacky world that is the National Ice Hockey League structure here in Great Britain. We focus on the National Division. That is our bread and butter, that is our home port. But of course, we're here to walk you through absolutely anything and everything from the National Division, as well as Division 1 and Division 2 in the north and in the south. July off-season special is here. I remember how calendars work and actually did the last Wednesday. And yep, slap bang in the middle of the Olympics. And while the Olympics is missing a bit of ice hockey, our field hockey friends get to be the focus of attention for a couple of weeks. But, you know, let's take some of that glory back. Charge at the Romford Raiders and my interview with Dante Abercrombie, the head coach of the Tennessee State University Tigers, the first NCAA hockey program at a historic black college. Over on the website, you've got 13 and a bit years worth of stuff there to kind of go back through. You've got old match reports. You've got last season's Banners on the Road series, which of course will be making a comeback for 24-25, where I will give you a nice in-depth look at every game I've managed to drag myself to across the country and even the continent when I find myself there as well. You've got interviews. You've got write-ups. There is a new hockey stories in the works that should be said, and certainly for our friends up north, they'll probably be of interest to them. But yeah, new hockey stories piece coming soon. I just need to finish writing it. It's the short version on that. It's been very busy because of course those of you who joined me last week will know. Been a bit of a busy week here in the BOTW household, but either way, there is tons of stuff, including the back catalogue of the old BOTW podcast, our free to download tabletop ice hockey game, Dice Hockey, and lots more stuff for you to check out over at bannersonthewall.wordpress.com. And the other thing, of course, is that we're live on YouTube. If you're new to these bits and pieces, hello. During the season, we're here Wednesday nights, 8 PM every week, and you get to kind of rattle through all of the big news and happenings from around the NIHL for the past week. During the off season, we stretch it out of a month. There's not as much stuff going on and bits and pieces, so we take a little bit of a break during the off season, as it were. But here we are at the end of July, and before you know it, we will be back full force every week of the season here on the BOTW YouTube channel. Hit the notification bell so you get notified when bits and pieces go live. Like the video, share the video, all that good stuff. And the other good thing, of course, is that we don't just do the live streams here on the BOTW YouTube channel. All of our video interviews, tons of other fun bits and pieces as well, with the movers and shakers of British and world ice hockey as well. We've interviewed people like Steve Dangle. Like I said, we've done Matty Davis, we've done Steve Nell, we've done Aaron Nell. One of these days I'll get John Neville on here. He's told me when he retires one of these days he'll sit down with me. But tons and tons of stuff to rock on there. And of course the other great bit about being live on YouTube is you've got the chat. Questions, comments, thoughts, feelings, everything that you want to have a chat about, please do feel free to chuck it in there. We'll pick things up as we go along because it's much better when it's a dialogue rather than a monologue. All we ask is that if you are sticking something in the chat, is to remember the golden rule here at BOTW, and that is DBAD. Don't be a dick. Be respectful of other people's thoughts and feelings, and we will have a lovely old time of it this evening. Either way, hope everybody is everyone is doing all right. Lots and lots of fun, bits and pieces of obviously happened over the last month. And for those of you who joined us last Wednesday for the sort of mini weird pop-up stream thing that I did, I had my birthday last Friday. I am now 40 years old. I am old, apparently, or at least older. Birthday was great. Had a lot of fun. Went really well. Got virtually nothing hockey related at all. I did get Ken Dryden's most recent book, but it's not hockey related. It's more of a sort of a personal memoir kind of job. If you're not familiar with Ken Dryden, you haven't read things like The Game, Game Changer, any of his more recent stuff he's done on the 1972 Summit series. Ken Dryden is one of my favourite authors. Let alone one of my favourite hockey authors. You definitely need to check out his stuff if you haven't already. We've also been watching tons and tons of Australian ice hockey. Big shout out to my friends over at Hockey Hype Australia. And Andrew McDougall, Gordon Goodenough, those guys there are doing some absolutely cracking bits and pieces covering hockey in Australia, and not just the men's stuff, but the women's stuff. So you will get some really good stuff, and enjoying the things coming out of Hockey Hype Australia in the last little while. Make sure you check out their stuff if you haven't already. Let's start off with what happened to me yesterday, post my birthday. So I jokingly put something out on the BOTW Twitter last week. That I said I turned up a week early for a call, and it was literally just because I'd misread my calendar. I just had a bit of a funny 5 minutes, and I misread what I was doing. And then that thing actually happened yesterday. And one of these things, and it's one of those moments where I kind of have to accepting a little bit more that perhaps the position of what BOTW is within the NIHL kind of media structure is a bit more than I thought it was. So yesterday, in what was sort of an informal, off-the-record chat, I spoke to the people who are running the NIHL Department of Player Safety for 24-25. Now, they told that the agreement that I reached with them was because if something is off the record, I don't report it in that sort of sense. I don't talk about who said what and what was going on. But NIHL management were kind enough to help set up a call between myself and the folk who are running DOPS for the upcoming year. Now, DOPS suffered a little bit last year, I think, from a variety of issues. One of them, of course, being that some people apparently couldn't tell where people's heads were. But ultimately, a couple of things that came out of last year was that DOPS has, and I've said it to a few people, DOPS had a credibility gap, quite a big credibility gap. And it needed to change this year. So my chat last night with the folk who are running DOPS for 24-25 was a discussion about how things are going to be different next year. The reason why they asked for everything to be off the record was because there are some bits that are still awaiting sign-off to be fully implemented at the moment. And as such, putting that they don't want that put into the public domain because something might change between now and that point where everything comes out into the public. And I said, okay, that's fine. I'm quite happy to just have the chat. The hope and the discussion that we've had is that hopefully down the line they will be in a position to come on the record and have that chat. The wheels are turning on changes that will hopefully improve things for next year. That's probably at the line I can say at the moment. But that conversation did happen. I have spoken to them. They are real people with hockey knowledge, with hockey involvement as well, which I know is very big for some people. They are not faceless. They are not nameless. They understand the context within which they are operating. And if they are able to enact things in the way they wish, I think it will be better. like I say, my hope is that down the line we will be in a position where we are able to have those folk who are in charge step out into the light. That is for another day. But that's what happened to me yesterday, was the ability to be able to have a chat with the folk who are in charge, to see what their plans are for 24-25. And the hope is that it will be better and it will be improved. Like I say, obviously the proof will be in the pudding. And I did say to them that, obviously that last year was an issue for a lot of people. There were a lot of issues that people did not like. There was a lot of stuff that didn't go the way it should have done. And they acknowledged that. So, it's going to be night and day, I am led to believe. I am reserving my judgment. So, yeah, the intention is good. I think it's probably what I can say. If what they've shown me is signed off, the intention is good. And I think there will be improvements. The improvements that... I think the thing that strikes me is that this requires the clubs to buy in as well, and the clubs need to do their bit. But there's some good stuff there. But obviously, DOPS was such a big talking point. Whether it was here, whether it was 4,000 and counting, whether it was Macca's Talk Hockey, whether it was any other kind of thing that whether it's any of the stuff that's happening in the north. Obviously the Billingham podcast is new and the DSO Dragons podcast is new, but Stick to the Pod talked about it. If you talked about the NIHL in any capacity in 23-24, DOPS was an issue for a bunch of different reasons. And it looks like there is an acknowledgement of what happened before, and there is a attempt to turn the corner. We will see what happens. Like I say, I have strongly encouraged them to step out into the light, and my hope is that they will do so, and they will do so maybe not necessarily on the live show, but the hope is that they will do that down the line. And we await to see what happens. Nothing I don't think will happen until we are at a point where things are properly signed off and ready to go. So we will see what happens there. They've got 4 weeks. They've got 4 weeks to get that sorted. So everyone needs to help film their games and help quicken the process. I think the thing I find interesting with this, Jamie, is that from a national division perspective, that press release, and we talked about it recently as well on here, that the national division appears to be being given a lot more autonomy. What DOPS might look different, how DOPS might look differently for them, remains to be seen. Because could they stump up money for extra parts of the process, so maybe somebody to help review things faster for them? Do they get their own process entirely? I venture probably not. But if the NIHL, if the national division are still looking to eventually break away, and of course this was talked about last summer during the Sheffield debacle, that the national division was going to step out and do its own thing. We just have to kind of sort of hold on and wait a little bit. There's still a few moving parts, and there's obviously still, the first pre-season games will be a month. No, it's actually my first game. My first game of the season will be a month tonight, because I will be in Telford. In Swindon for Swindon versus Telford. So that would be a lot of fun. I would really appreciate as well if my internet would stop dropping so rapidly and randomly when I'm not doing anything. I am going to turn off a few bits and pieces quickly in the background, because my connection keeps dipping in and out quite drastically. I'll get rid of that as well. That will probably help matters. So yeah, I think from there, what happens with DOPS is going to be interesting. But in terms of teams filming their games, for some of the lower down divisions in terms of getting cameras of quality, but every national division team streams. There is video. The issue is probably getting it to something the level of a Milton Keynes style stream, where you've got multiple camera angles. That's going to be a problem for clubs. But ultimately, the better footage you provide, the more angles you can provide, the better you'll get a decision. I think the issue is going to be timing in this as well. Clubs need to... It's the catch-22 situation here of a process that's volunteer-driven at both ends. Like clubs, most teams will not be employing their video people. So that's going to be hard for teams as well, like getting video to teams quickly. Ultimately, part of me sort of says, well, if you upload your game quick enough, give people timestamps and just figure it out. But that's obviously comes to the fact you still need somebody to look through bits and pieces as well, so it's quite hard to do. You had to film them last season in North 1 or you were fined. Maybe the season 2 before. But 100% last season. Yeah, you did. And we saw Oxford in the past get fined for not filming games. Every team has to film their game. The issue is about that quality element as well. Because certainly in Division 2, whether it was North or South, the minimum requirement was to... you had to have one camera that covered the whole ice. And so you effectively could just stick one static camera somewhere that just had the entire ice surface on it. And that's not super helpful. Just use a video camera for ice hockey. Yeah, I mean, James, there's a bunch of different options really as well, but I think it's not just the tech, it's the confidence to be able to operate it properly. And obviously, some clubs will have a deluge of people. MK, for example, teams that hire streaming folk, but there's there's ways and means to do it, and I think there's an element as well of the IHA needing to help, but there's also the clubs need to take the responsibility for their part of the process. They can't complain about DOPs not doing stuff in a timely manner if they don't feed into that process, into their part of the process themselves. Getting games uploaded in a quick fashion, I think, is important too. But yeah, they were very polite and they were very nice, and hopefully we'll be able to have a better conversation out loud soon for everybody. Is the short answer there. I'll be in MK watching MK versus Essen Mosquitoes. How good is Germany Oberliga North, Anthony? So the Oberliga North is where the Rostock Piranhas, the first ever ice hockey team I ever watched play. So I do keep tabs on the Oberliga North quite a lot. The Oberliga, Jamie, is a fascinating league because it's got a very wide it's the ceiling to floor gap is wide. It's quite wide. For those of people not aware, MK and Coventry are kind of sort of it's almost like sort of a mini sort of three-way kind of tournament. The Coventry Blaze will also MK will be playing Coventry and be playing Essen. So this is the Lightning getting two very good pre-season tests. Oberliga North is an interesting one because the North as a league is an entertaining product. It's probably quite close to the national, although probably a step above. I can't see Leeds winning the Oberliga North. They wouldn't be at the bottom of it though. There's, like I say, this is the issue with the Oberliga North, is that the pool is very wide in terms of what happens. The teams at the top could easily play in the DEL2. Essen were third. The issue being is that for the Oberliga North is that the playoffs become a cross-league thing. So you have the Oberliga North and you have the Oberliga South. And the Oberliga South is essentially just the Bayern League on steroids. There's very few teams. I don't think there's any... There can't be more than a couple of teams outside of Bavaria in that division. And pretty much every team in that crossover thing. So the top 8 make the playoffs. But then you cross over into the other league. So Essen finished third in the North. They took on Piting, who finished 6th in the South, and Piting smoked them because the South is mental and is a very good league. So you'll be in for a good game irrespective. I think Essen will probably win, but the thing I will be interested to see is by how much on that front. The Mosquitoes Essen should fall kind of between both sides, but that kind of remains to be seen. I would expect Coventry to win and MK to lose. So MK fans, don't have a meltdown if you lose that one. Either way, just because for whatever reason my CPU appears to be wanting to have a complete funny 5 minutes, I'm going to have to pull up NIHL rosters on my phone because everything is going a bit wonky on my on the laptop itself. I'm not quite sure what the problem is, but the connection tonight, just seeming to be suffering from the heat in the same way as the rest of us. I mean, what we'll probably do... I mean, obviously, there's been a deluge of signings today across the NIHL. Of course, we can rely on Andrew Day for tweeting to us about all the variety of women's signings that come up. Of course, we just see because Talia Davidson-Wright's been announced in the last hour as signing back for the Queen Bees. What we might do, I mean, let's just have a quick look back as to what's happened today. If we pull up NHL roster's Twitter account. Because certainly in the last hour, Joe Walls is back for the Billingham Stars in North 1. Not had the opportunity to watch tons and tons of Billingham, obviously. Commentated on that national final. Billingham were a very good, solid unit as a team, but their big performance didn't really appear on that day. But but obviously, league winners in North 1. Plenty of good stuff there. But yeah, questions, comments, keep chucking things into the chat as we go along. Happy to pick things up as we go. Like I say, it's all a bit loosey-goosey with there no games being played at the moment. Richard Robinson, great to see him in the chat. And of course, was a basically used a VO, but quality wasn't great. Yeah, I mean, obviously, I will leave that to your judgment. Of course, speaking of Richard, for those of you who aren't aware that he's in the chat, Richard's son is, of course, Xander Robinson, scorer of the South 2 playoff winning goal. He's going to be playing for the MK Thunder this upcoming season, as is Teo Sire, who's signed on a two-way deal with the Guildford Phoenix in the last couple of hours. Really like this. This is a really shrewd signing by MK. Had the opportunity to watch the Phoenix a couple of times last year. Sire, born in the Czech Republic. Very, very good, useful player at South 2 level. Lots of guys on that Phoenix roster should probably be getting look-ins higher up, but I think they're waiting for the right opportunity rather than just jumping. And where there's obviously lots of question marks about the Thunder, again, the big question has always been for the last couple of years in South 1, will MK be competitive? Well, actually, they've got a lot of guys signing on, hopefully probably in the fact that a lot of guys will kind of rotate in and out as things become available elsewhere. From the looks of this, Guildford have first call on Teo Sire's services, but South 2 is a one home, one away league, so the ability for Sire to be available for MK games is going to be increased. We're not going to see sort of 3 or 4 games out of him. Very good shot, very good hockey IQ. He probably suffers from he's not the biggest of people, guys. He kind of needs to bulk up a little bit. But his speed will kill, particularly it kills in South 2, and it will probably do some damage in South 1 as well. Really interested as well with a guy like that on a two-way, if he's going to rotate into the MK roster, where he sits on that. Feels like a bit of his skill set feels a waste on a third or a fourth line, in my opinion. But I like where MK have garnered criticism for not putting out a competitive roster at times, and that being from me. I still think this is a really, really shrewd bit of business. If you get the opportunity to watch Teo Sire at South 1, do. I think he's a very, very exciting young prospect. Graham Hamilton there in the chat, of course, host of the Blackburn Hawks podcast. So great to have you in the chat. What's your opinion on the North vs South playoff finals weekend? Personally, I love it. Love it as well. More interactivity between leagues outside of just pre-season is a good thing, in my opinion. I find it interesting as well, though, that they're going to have the league winners playoff at Coventry for that game and have this kind of combined playoffs thing as well. I think that muddies the water a bit. So interested to see how that happens. But I think in terms of giving something to the fans, I think that's really good. I really like it as a concept. I think that's really fun. Looking forward to it. I'm interested to see because in the South, for me, it feels like in terms of who will make that final of being a Streatham, Chelmsford, Slough kind of thing in South 1. North 1 feels a bit more open, unless Billingham find a way to do what Streatham did. Billingham kind of tailed off at the end. Blackburn obviously came through, won the cup, won the playoffs. Solihull looked good again when they actually bothered to announce anything. Also, apologies, I've just realised what I need. I'm going to put put on some extra light there because it feels like half my face is in shadow. But yeah, so because of course I know a lot of Blackburn fans obviously were wondering, could we have beaten, if it had been us instead of Billingham in commentary, could we have beaten Streatham? My answer is no. I don't think. I think Streatham would have actually won that irrespective. But this year, all bets are off. Although Streatham again look incredibly strong in the south. I'm still worried for the Thunder. We'll be whipping boys to South 1. With South 1 improving further this off-season. Certainly the top end has. I think Jonathan, actually, Jamie's made a really good point there in the chat. Thunder should compete with Oxford and Cardiff over the season. And it feels like in a 10-team league, there's now a bit more of a competition where we will have teams not make the playoffs. I'll be interested to see how that competition piece plays out at the bottom end of the table. Fascinated by what Invicta have done as well, obviously in South 1 with with Aaron Connolly, Dan Scott, some of their some of those changes that they've made there. Really, there's a lot of great threads. But obviously, lots of great threads happening as well up in the north. Also, as well, talking about that north versus south interactivity, I saw today as well, pre-season game, Lee Valley Lions versus Nottingham Lions 2. So the teams that were bottom of the respective Division 2s in the north and the south will be going head-to-head at the Lee Valley, the rink at Lee Valley over as a pre-season game. Love spectacle. Well, I can't make it, unfortunately, but I would really be interested to. In fairness, Will Fry looks like he's bringing in some good young talent and some that have played together before. Zander is excited with what Will is doing in the background too. I think it's good that guys are excited for the project. I think the worry is that we'll see cricket scores again, and I don't necessarily think that's unfounded. Just looking as well at other bits and pieces we've had today. Ruben Sweeney Fuller back with the Coventry is now with the Coventry NIHL Blaze. He comes up from the Blaze youth setup, was with the under 18s last year. The Cov Blaze under 18s, I believe, won their division last year. So adding as a Sweeney Fuller, not a player I'm massively familiar with, but Coventry's NIHL side had a much better year. The Wooden Spoon Bowl is a thing. The Coventry NIHL Blaze in a league where with Hull Jets having left Division 2, and it felt very much like who was going to challenge Telford. The Blaze did a lot better, I think, than many people thought. How they were gonna do. Sutton were obviously very cleanly number 2, but Coventry made themselves a pretty firm third place team in that division. And then Billingham, of course, decided to ruin everybody's day at the playoff weekend and won the playoffs from 4th. But Coventry is a good program that's kind of doing some more stuff. It's obviously quite a big gap between the Elite League Blaze and the Division 2 Blaze, but there's a lot of there's some good stuff happening there in Coventry, and it's good that those under 18s are getting that opportunity to be promoted. I'm interested to see how Invicta get on versus Romford in pre-season. I think it depends massively on whether Romford's entire roster has turned up. By that point, will all the imports be in and those kind of things? Because Invicta's big issue last year, and I was at the playoff game in Gosport between the Solent Devils and the Invicta Dynamos. And Invicta's big issue last year, and it was during league games as well, it should be said, way too emotional. They let their emotions get the better of them. How this all kind of plays out, I venture it'll be a pretty, be a chance for both teams to just roll lines, try things out. I don't think you can read too far into it in either direction. The only way I think you can start reading into it more is if Invicta get a convincing win. If Invicta win by like 3-4 goals, so that'll be a thing. Imports are here for Meet the Players, so we're here for pre-season games. Thank you, James. Much obliged. Good to know that. Good to know the folk in Romford are rocking along. What other news have we had today? Obviously, Teo Sai we've talked about as we skip through. Jacob Minter will be on a 2-way deal between the Slough Jets and the Swindon Wildcats. Minter did guest for the Wildcats at times last year when there were injuries in the Swindon roster, so not unsurprisingly he's back there as well. Also very interesting, of course, given the fact that, of course, Slough share a rink with, and they've had guys on 2 ways with Swindon and guys on 2 ways with Bristol, and them and the Bees just still won't play nice, unfortunately. And the Bees, of course, with their who are looking a bit thin on the ground roster-wise, but they've got these developmental affiliations now. They've got guys on two ways with Streatham. They've got their agreement now with the Cardiff Canucks as well. So the Bees are doing things to kind of address that. Although it's guys and bodies for the future, I'm interested how many they're able to kind of put out on a night to night. I seem to upset Swindon fans yesterday. I think you upset the. Because to be fair, I had a conversation with Jack from Macca's Talk Hockey as well, and I think that there was kind of a feeling that potentially some people would kind of undersold the new import that's coming in, Jake Bricknell, and I think for me the bigger question for me is that you played on 4 teams in a season. That immediately makes me scratch my head. His point totals at leagues better than the national division speak of a guy that at this level should be going for 60 to 70 to 80 points. That's the thing there. The issue is he does have to settle and he has to get used to this league, because we've seen guys of a similar quality come in and be brilliant and guys of a similar quality come in and just not fit. It doesn't always work. And I think the thing that I get accused of, and it's fair to a point, is that people sort of say, like, you sit on the fence, Anthony. Well, I can't, there is a limited data set to be able to look at anything with. I like to see people with my own eyes first. And there is a validity to that criticism in that sometimes I will not commit to an opinion as quickly as some people would like me to. But the flip side of that is, can I see the chap with my own eyes before I really kind of make a firm decision about him? One player in that vein... Oh, I've gone a bit slow and a bit funny. Oh, am I going to come back? Says the encoding's overloaded. But one player on that vein is Britton Priest. Britton Priest was a player last year who I was unsure about, and when I got to watch him with my own 2 eyes, changed my opinion on him. Britton Priest. He is a much better goalkeeper than paper does him justice for. Bobby Young on paper should have been quality. Davies even expected him not to be there post-January, a bit like Cooper. It never materialised. Also depends on what game Nell lets him play, as he neuters physical players. It's certainly a criticism of Swindon's game in that they suffer from not liking the rough stuff, and also as well their biggest, toughest player is Tyler Plews, and Tyler Plews is so integral to their defensive makeup that you lose him and it's hard to kind of make headway. For me, Britnell's potential upside is Rory Herman. Realistic part of me worries. He's on a second line with Chris Jones and a TBA import, and as you say, ends with only 60 points. Firstly, Joe, hello. Much love as always, my good man. For me, I wonder whether Bricknell's not the second line centre and Jones plays on the third. Because I think a large chunk of this kind of depends on who the third import is for Swindon. So, of course, Swindon announcing in the last week that neither Colby Tower nor Gail Lebwele will be back for them this year. So, completely, apart from Malazinski, you get 2 of 3 new imports for Swindon. Who is that, and for you wrestling folk who like the NWO, who is the third man? And if Bricknell goes into the centre, then that for me drops Chris Jones to being centre on the third, and you potentially kind of have a second import winger, and then you put Jones with. I'm just trying to think really who you do put Jones with in that circumstance in terms of who's there. But for me, I'd actually be inclined to sign a defenseman, and then move Luke Johnson back to being a forward. I maintain that neither him nor Edgars Bebris are defensemen, but I think there is probably more value to keeping Bebris a defenseman and moving Johnson back to forward if you sign an import D-man, in my opinion. Or kind of use Johnson as kind of like a utility guy, so when there's injuries on D, drop him back. Just turn him into the new Ross Cowley, essentially. I would still say that Swindon still need to fill that last import slot with a D man. Well, I mean, I'm interested to see what Milton Keynes do with their new D guy as well. We've barely still even touched on the signings that have been announced today, as we're sort of flicking back here through NHL rosters. Paul Petts, with the basis at Buffalo, of course, there will be no senior hockey in Basingstoke this year, as the rink will finally undergo its refurbishment. So guys have been dispersing. We've seen Yanni Virtanen signed today with the Solent Junior Devils. The irony was not lost on Yanni, given that he's in his 40s, signing for a team that's junior anything. But Paul Petts to the Guildford Phoenix, huge signing in the context of South 2. Petts could play above, probably should really play above South 2. Obviously choosing to stay where he is for the time being, and that is a team that is going to win a lot of hockey games this season. If I'm right, Petts is still based down towards like Leon Solent, towards the Portsmouth area, so getting to Guildford is incredibly easy. Is going to be a lot of it on that front. But for the Phoenix as well, added centre depth, playmaking depth, a guy with a two-way game, great speed at that level as well, point production. Some of those guys like Sire, like Josh Sherrington, like Fraser Studley. There's going to be guys who are going to be able to get fed a lot by Paul Petts next year. Otherwise, what else as well? Luther Daly joins the Cardiff Fire from the under 18s set up in Cardiff. Going to be a fascinating year for the Fire. It does feel like they've stepped up into Division 1 to kind of stop the Canucks stepping up into Division 1. But really fascinated to see how they go. Other thing I didn't know about Luther Daly as well was that he's played for Hong Kong under 18s. So fair play to him, an international player in South 1 this upcoming year. Sign a big offensive D-man of a high calibre. I don't necessarily know whether they need an offensive D-man if they've got Bebris and Bradley, I think is the question there for Swindon. I'm interested to hear what Scutty would think of that. Billing, Malas, Pekodzi, Billing, Bricknell, Nell. Well, you're not going to split up Nell and Malazinski if you can afford to. So you'd probably stick with at least to start the year, you stick with what you know. Malazinski with Nell and Pekodzi, and then you could put Bricknell in the middle of a line with... you put Billing in there twice. Jones, Shaw, Lipsy. Yeah, I think for me, you try using Jones as your centre. Pekodzi, now Malazinski, Sayers, Billing, Bricknell, Shaw, Jones, Johnson, Lipsy, Bullas, and another child on that front. For me, I mean, do you play Bricknell on the wing with Billing, or do you play Bricknell in the middle? I think becomes a conversation there. Reed Sayers getting an opportunity on your second line, I think, is fantastic, because Reed Sayers is very good. Spedafore, I think, will be used with Malik Martelli on the second D pair with Griffin and Nags at the first. Johnson needs to go in a similar role that Ben Brown plays in MK. I just feel that Johnson's too much of a forward to not be a forward in that sense with me. Going to be cricket scores in some of them South 1 games. The top 4-5 compared to the rest. Bucks lost 3 of their best players. Cardiff Fire weak. MK Thunder weak. Oxford a bit 50-50. Oxford just need to announce more players. It's really hard to kind of make ends meet on that one, all things considered. But yeah, so certainly some interesting stuff with Britain. Like I say, massively depends on what this final import is for Swindon as well. But yeah, that top end of South 1 looks really strong. And actually the big X factor in South 1. What is Swindon going to be like? Brett Massey in goal. Steve Osmond, Liam Coleman leading the way up front. What's Jay Warren going to do in South 1? Real X factor. Actually, and I can't remember the date off the top of my head, but I have a spreadsheet now for the games I'm going to this year to try and keep tabs of everything. Oxford versus Swindon at Oxpens is down on my list of games to go to this year. I want to see that derby. That's going to be a lot of fun, I believe. What else have we had from today on NHL rosters? Felix Sorensen signs a multi-way deal with the Kingston Sharks under 18s, the Kingston Sharks, NHL 2, and the Hull Jets. Great to see some of those younger guys getting those opportunities to play as much hockey as possible. Ewan Williams signing with the Sheffield Scimitars. He will also be on a two-way deal with the Sheffield Steel Dogs. So great to see that there's that movement as well, not just from the Steel Dogs up into the Steelers as well, but reaching down into the Scimitars and giving some of the talented youngsters in that team, a team that did struggle and probably will struggle again in North 1 this year, but they're going to get opportunities as well. The great bit about NHL rosters as well is they do keep tabs on some of the stuff in the SNL. They've obviously got the new Dundee Tigers team, where the SNL teams are going to merge there. So John Gordon is gone to the Dundee Tigers. Chris Wilson has re-signed for the Paisley Pirates. I've seen in there as well. Aaron Thompson has joined Aberdeen from Dundee. Don't write off the Thunder because he's added some new players with ambition. Let's see how they go. Never underestimate the underdog. By definition, as an underdog, you underestimate them. I think Richard would be there as the person who uses a lot of words, sometimes not always in the correct way. I think the issue, Richard, is that having a lot of young, hungry players doesn't always speak to the quality they're in, particularly as when you think of a team like Slough. I don't think it's unfair to say that however young and however hungry both of those rosters are, Slough look really impressive. And they don't have a... Has that 16-year-old Scottish stud gone anywhere yet? I don't know off the top of my head, is the short answer. What else we had today? Cam Wilkie signing for the Edinburgh Capitals. He was on sort of a... Well, I suppose it's technically a two-way deal between Kirkcaldy and Blackburn last year. Lots of those Kilmarnock lads ending up, Innes Gallagher probably being the most impressive of them. Some of those younger Solway lads as well are going to be on two-way deals with Widnes again, I noticed. Swindon are using the Slough model, a few experienced players and youth. Might take a season, but they will compete in that 5 to 8 positions. I wouldn't disagree with that, actually. I think they quite comfortably make the playoffs by the look of the roster they've put together. What else have we had? We're into yesterday now. So a few bits and pieces there. Tom Mallett back for the Invicta Mustangs. Not a guy I've seen a lot of, but I hear good things about him. Obviously, Jake Bricknell. Carl Mitchell-Quinn back for Kingston. Ollie Hunt, of course, back as the captain until the Tigers 2, the league defending champions. Here's one thing I'm interested to talk about with folk, which is the fixtures. How are we feeling about the fixtures? Because, of course, we've seen some announcements from a couple of sides that are not massively happy. D-side and Solihull being 2 of them. I'm really... I've struggled in some ways, given the fact they had fixtures meetings. Like, how do you not get this sorted out? I think it's probably one of the things there. Also, from what I've heard, some teams didn't turn up. It doesn't help. Cam Wilkie to Edinburgh Caps from the Castrals is a good move. So many legit players in the SNL, the Northern League, the Hawks entered in last season. But put a fair few lads in the shop window. I don't disagree. In some ways, I'm really interested because, like, I feel we are heading back towards a space where unification is going to be back on the table. And for me, the SNL becomes more of a third Div 1 conference, if that makes sense. In the sense of we will end up having a, sort of a playoff format, no comment, where certainly if there is a full whack unification where everything comes under IHUK or any other named entity you can think of, where you effectively have North 1, South 1 and the SNL kind of coming together more within the same structure and then having a different playoff format as a result. Thunder fixtures are now still apart from Chelmsford. D-side throwing the toys out the pram. You don't turn up to the meeting, you don't get to say. Can't comment officially on that one, but if they didn't turn up and then they complain, they do have to kind of take a little bit of that on the chin. And if anybody from D-side's watching, you know how to contact me. Put me right. If I'm wrong, put me right. Always happy to be corrected on those bits and pieces. But yeah, the National League fixtures feel interesting. Obviously, that dropping of games in the Cup is going to impact. Certainly, having sort of sat down, I've planned out most of September into October so far as to where I'm going to be. But where I'm interested to see, and I'm just going to double check whether I've actually still got the email, because I should be able to kind of give folk a bit of a rough idea as to where I'm going. Just going to double check where because I did I've made this thing. Let's just have a quick squeeze and see. Yeah, there we go. It's going to work on my phone. Like I say, I'm not going to touch my, not touching my laptop, given the fact it's all a bit funny as to where I'm going. They put the MK Chelmsford one on the League Cup final weekend. Fun. So, what have I got? So, for me, August the 31st is Swindon versus Telford, which I will be at. Weekend of the 7th and 8th, I have commentary for the Guildford Flames, so I'll be at the Spectrum for the Flames against the Manchester Storm. Weekend of the 14th and the 15th, I will be at, as is tradition, Solent versus Invicta. Have to get in one of those, at least one of those games once a season, so I'll be in Gosport for that one. Weekend of the 21st and 22nd, I'll be back in Swindon for the Wildcats against Solway, and then the weekend of the 28th and 29th, I'll be at the newly minted Berkshire Beat against the MK Lightning on the 28th, that's a Saturday. And then the first weekend of October is the 5th and the 6th. I'll be in Oxford on the 6th for what I believe should be the first game in Oxford, at least, between the City Stars and Swindon Wildcats, Div 1. I've got all my Guildford games kind of plugged in for the rest of the year. As I said last week on my sort of birthday weird stream thing, I've actually got a string in Guildford where I'm there 4 weeks, a Sunday and then 3 Saturdays back to back through November into early December. And the only other game I have officially on the docket right now is Sunday the 3rd of November in Gosport, which is the Solent Junior Devils versus the Cardiff Canucks, because having interviewed Trevor Hendricks, I want to see Cardiff I want to be able to see Cardiff, and if they're going to be on my doorstep, I want to see Trevor Hendricks, the former twice drafted LHL draftee, drafted twice by the Columbus Blue Jackets, trying to take on Jani Virtanen. I want to see this. That's going to be fun. That's going to be a lot of fun, that game. So yeah, I've got a few bits in the pipeline there, but I should hit Elite League. I'll hit Elite League, Division 1, Division 2, and the National Division by sort of November, by at least the beginning of November, which will be pretty good. And I will obviously need to look at the rest of October and kind of plan where I'm going to go on that front. I also want to kind of plan a bit more of my excursion of where I'm going to go for the year. I obviously went to Dumfries last year. I don't know whether I will do Dumfries again. I'm tempted by Hull, just because, of course, having kind of followed the Seahawks kind of since their inception, as to how that's gonna work. To be able to see it up close would be fun. Want to try and find a weekend though where I can kind of do either the Jets and the Seahawks or the Sharks and the Seahawks together. Particularly as well if there's a day where, because Kingston, the Div 2 side, have a lot of sort of 12 o'clock, 12:30 face-offs. And if there's an opportunity to do like a double header in Hull, that could be a lot of fun. So that could be really interesting. And Hull, is sort of a big hockey city. Billingham as well. I know a few Billingham folk have said I should go up there. I've got family in Burnley, so Blackburn wouldn't be out of the question there in terms of looking at some stuff. So I need to make a decision on that front. I need to look at the fixture list and kind of see what I can and can't get away with. Might see you there for the 28th. It's my 30th birthday weekend and I have it off too, right, mate? If it's your 30th birthday, Jamie, and we're in the same place at the same time, I can't drink because I'll be driving, but if you are drinking and it's your 30th birthday, I will find a way to get you a pint or at least get you a coffee or something, Sunshine, because I think that's only fair. That's an interesting point, how Cardiff Canucks perform when it's crunch as you consider the level of Hendricks if he's on the ice. Yeah, but obviously he can't be on the ice for 60 minutes. Hull tried playing Declan Balmer for the better part of 35-40 minutes a night, and that did not work, especially at the end of the year on that front. Just flicking through some of the other announcements over the last couple of days. Bailey Thomas, who I know Dominic Osman spoke very, very highly of in his press releases, signed with the Blackburn Hawks, and he'll be playing some of his under-18 hockey with the Manchester Storm as well because of his age. Interested to see how he does. Lucas Sheldon is back on his two-way deal with the Nottingham Lions and the Nottingham Panthers. I get why, because it keeps him playing and keeps him nearby to Nottingham, whereas ultimately a lot of people would say if Sheldon's going to step up into the national, one, where, and two, it would prove problematic for the Panthers keeping a hold of his services. If so, the nearest team is Peterborough. Peterborough don't need a netminder, so that would obviously cause some problems there. What else are we seeing here? Sam Rogers having moved to the Hull Jets from the Sheffield Shimatard, making the hours trip. I'm interested to see how Hull do this year. Obviously, quite a productive first season. Really good at home. Garbage on the road. Will they be able to win more than like 3 away games all year? Is going to be an interesting one there. What else did I see in the last day or so? There it is. Kobe Grinnell Park, a relation, from what I understand as well. He's going to be on a 2-way deal with the Romford Buccaneers and the Lee Valley Lions, so be able to get some key minutes, hopefully in some different situations there by playing with Lee Valley. I know Ethan Frayne has resigned as well to go in net for Lee Valley. So lots of bits and pieces going on. There. I mean, any other really big signings? Obviously, James Moss back with Billingham. That was announced a couple of days ago. Billingham's best player in the national final for me, in my opinion. I really liked what I saw of James Moss. Obviously, well from that Basingstoke perspective, the Buffaloes, Scott Ander, of course, missed the back end of the season with an arm injury. Did Scott Ander? He'll be lacing them up for Haringey as the Huskies look to try and knock off the Guildford Phoenix and their domination at the top of the table. Shea Woolmore is one to keep an eye on for the Bucks. Very solid player in only 16. Well, if they're going to keep producing them like Brindley Caps, lots of promising bits and pieces in the pipeline there. I'm just trying to, like I say, sort of skipping through some of the ones that are on the lineup here. Scott Bailey back with the Guildford Phoenix after a year out. I don't believe he played last year, though. Joe Scutts will correct me, but I'm pretty certain Scott Bailey sat out last season. Richie Pickering back with Chelmsford. Chelmsford are going to be an interesting side. I still don't understand how Alan Lack's going to play South 1 for Chelmsford and be the head coach of the junior system in Romford. I don't really... The practicalities, I'm struggling with that in my head. Now, Alan is a man of near endless energy, so if anybody can make it work, it will be him. However, I feel that some issues might appear there. We obviously talked a little bit about the SNL, and that's obviously a move that is sort of a big one contextually in the SNL. Is Ross Connolly leaving the Solway Sharks, leaves the National Division to sign for the Edinburgh Capitals. They're looking very strong. Nope, he didn't. Was travelling apparently. Thank you, Joe. I was certain he hadn't played last year, and you can't blame a guy for taking some time to go look after himself. His name's gone straight out of my head. Solihull lad, gone to play in Sydney. He's out for a year travelling as well, and his name's just completely gone. I want to say Richard Brown, but I'm certain that's not correct. But as you see, we've been away for a while, and lots of busy bits and pieces going on. The one that we'll talk about, and obviously the one that will affect Joe quite heavily, where we talked about that Cardiff Canucks developmental bits and pieces they've got going on with the Bees, and that's Harry Thomas joining on a 2-way with the young netminder joining on a 2-way between the Canucks and the Bees. Richard Crowe, thank you. Got the first name right, if nothing else. But yeah, I'm fascinated as to how Thomas, when and if he gets used, or whether this is purely for training. I think having that extra guy, when somebody's not available potentially to come and sort of step in, get him some experience, that's obviously a really, really good thing. Of all the areas where they kind of need depth as well, because if the Bees and Slough don't get on to the point where you're not going to be able to borrow anybody off of the Jets, yes, Cardiff is a way away, but the ability to have, especially a netminder of decent standing on standby, is quite savvy, I think, as well. I think having Ashley Tate involved as well is going to be another way to kind of get some of these younger guys to want to be involved, just because of who Tate is. And that's nothing against Dom Gabai, but Dom Gabai's reputation is as a player, not as a coach. And Ashley, with all the will in the world, Ashley Tate, yes, admittedly didn't win was unable to win stuff at Basingstoke, but his reputation is higher than Dom Gabai's, I'd argue, in British hockey. The only thing, of course, with Thomas is he is very young. He's 16. Played in Slovakia though. Played for GB at the 2024 Youth Winter Olympics. This is clearly a kid that's going places. I believe the initial plan is training. Max is a qualified goalie coach. This is Max Wright, who's going to be the import netminder for the Bees. So we'll learn. He and Shep will learn. Brett Shepherd, that is, will learn a lot. Was the plan last year with Krajkovic. And why not as well? And good for. And also as well, if you're the Bees and you are a lower budget side, what can you offer? You offer opportunity and you offer a shop window. And actually, if you don't have tons and tons of money to attract guys, attracting people in a different way is really, really good. Sort of the ability to have different kinds of training, have more training, get that exposure is very good. What you don't want to happen to the Bees is the Bees turn into a National Division version of the MK Thunder. And I think ultimately that's not going to happen. Are the Bees going to be a title-winning side this year on the basis of the roster they've signed? Probably not. But offering guys different opportunities in different ways. Those youngsters in Streatham that are going to get a look in at National Division. Preston Toombs, like the ability for the Bees to pull through Preston Toombs, potentially going to be huge. Getting first look at all of these young Cardiff Canucks lads who might be, who are buying into this new system. Trevor Hendricks has got, getting first dibs, on those ones that are able to kind of, step in and have a go at National Division. Like sometimes when life hands you lemons, you have to make lemonade. But also as well, sometimes if you don't have the lemons at all to make the lemonade, just plant the lemon tree. Like it's a different way of doing it, and it might be short-term pain for long-term gain for the Bees. So I'm not super optimistic about their chances of finishing in mid-table. It feels like the Bees are going to be scrapping for the last playoff spot. But if there is a plan here to make things better for longer, then we can look back at 2024-25 when it's 27-28 or 28-29, and we can say there was the genus of this beginning, and we'll be able to look back and Doug Shepherd and Dom Gabai and Ashley Tate all look like geniuses. Offer more ice time, showcase talent, also better level of personal investment to development, family mentality. Yeah, a good point, well made there, Mike. Season ticket sales look good for the National League. Hull, Leeds and Swindon all over 500. MK over 1,000 season tickets sold. Good things happening. Good things feel like they're happening. Yay, I'm a lemon. It's not the worst thing anyone else has called me. Are you the lemon or are you the sugar, Joe? There's the issue. Because you're there to showcase it to everybody. So arguably you're making things sweeter for people. So that makes you the sugar and not the lemon. And I've definitely called you worse. I could have called you... people won't get this joke. It's one for me and Joe. I could have called you a Fiat Panda. And it would have been much worse. But the... just having a quick squiz just in case obviously bits and pieces are flying about whilst we're chatting. So Harry Wright signing for the Romford Buccaneers. I can see there as well. There's a team that's going to be. There's a team that'll be interesting to watch this year. Like there's already been mentioned, with a few bits kind of missing, as it were, from last year, and obviously the sort of the upheaval. Telford recruitment has impressed me over the summer. Yeah, there's some real thought that's gone into that Telford roster. It feels like a lot rests on Yokoyama panning out, at least in the short term. Because if he doesn't, then the ability to get an import from elsewhere obviously is an option on that front. I'm just pulling up the Telford roster while we look at it, because of course Harding adds a different dimension in the centre, which has allowed them to kind of take the chance on Yokoyama. They've got some different kind of depth there in Landsbergs, who's obviously had a bit of a torrid year last year, but they've kept Mitchell King, they've kept Howells, they've kept some of those guys who did some really good depth work for them last year, like James Smith, like the Price boys, Harry Ferguson, of course, who's able to kind of play in the top six as well. It does not look completely world-beating, but Telford won the title 2 years in a row by not being the best team of individuals. They ground teams into the dust, and that's how they won. I'm really fascinated, having never seen him, to see Noah Kerirainen, if and when he is available and I see Telford play. So that will be an interesting one. And also as well, actually at the moment, only two obviously Sutton and Pecker will not be coming back. But also as well at the moment, Aidan Wilson and Henry Adams, the only other two players out. I mean, that's some faith in your roster if you're Tom Watkins, another man with not a ton of money trying to make some good things happen there. But yeah, there's a lot of potential. Really, I think Devin Skaleski is going to need to hit the ground running. It feels, but there's real potential there. I think it's done well with the resources at hand, I think is probably the thing there. Finn and RMK being on two ways will be tough when we don't have them. D will have to be strong. My understanding, though, is that Telford have first dibs on both of their services over Belfast. So the chances of them really missing, bar a big injury crisis for the Giants, is going to be low. Unless they really make an impression, in which case, if I'm Tom Watkins, I'm not standing in their way. What you are more likely to see is some of these young guys, when they are on the road in the midweek, getting opportunities. And depending on where they are, midweek games up in Scotland, they can call on Kel Beattie if they need a body on defence. They can call on Mason Alderson, or if they've got games at home, it's a well-trodden path between Solway and Belfast. Away game in Coventry middle of the week, Guildford middle of the week. Well, then you can call on Rhodes, you can call on Finn, and pull them in that way and get a look at them in different situations, out of their comfort zone, in places that they may not have played for a very long time, albeit if you've got an away game on Coventry on a Wednesday night, Belfast, not calling on Rhodes Mitchell King would feel a bit silly, given he's a former Coventry junior. But you get what I mean. Same thing with Archie Salisbury with Glasgow. That's a shop window for Archie. Don't expect Archie Salisbury to be playing up in Glasgow a ton, unless they're really, really sure. But those midweek games down in Guildford, down in Cardiff, Coventry, Nottingham, he's well placed to be able, Archie, get yourself up here, we'll meet you up there. Belfast will try and get them on matches when Belfast are playing Steelers, Manchester, Nottingham, etc. You see, I disagree there, Mike. I think Belfast will try and get them when they're available, and preferably against some of the lower end teams, because I don't think, why would you call them up there just to, if Belfast are playing Sheffield, whilst I strongly would argue they should, the likelihood of Adam Keefe playing his two ways in a situation like that, unless the game is decided early, is very small. Manchester, chance of minutes. Coventry, chance of minutes. Maybe even Guildford, if things don't go right, chance of minutes. Some of those guys, if you can get them to meet them up in Scotland, Clam, Dundee, there's chance of minutes there. Nottingham are going to be a very different prospect this year. Of course, last year you give Nottingham the mulligan, and I don't, for me, I think they will work them out like that. Mac and Carter Hamill, also can be used by Kiefer in midweek as well. Yeah, but it also as well, if you've got injuries, it depends what you're missing, or it depends what you want to look at as well, right? Like they've signed Carter Hamill. Has Adam Keefe seen him in his own two eyes? I understand they're all going to be kind of attending training camp if they're available to do so, because the Giants do have a training camp that they'll go to. So, but again, it kind of depends on what you're missing. Like, if you've got a bunch of grinding forwards, or you've got some guys who are a bit of your more physical edge, for example, that are missing because of injury. With all due respect to Carter Hamill's not going to fill that gap. Where Mason Alderson might be a better option. If you've got all your forwards, but your 3D men down, well then Kel Beattie and Rhodes Mitchell-King are more likely to get a look in there, aren't they? So it's massively dependent on how desperate Keefe is to look at people and what are the needs of the roster. Max Stewart is, whilst they will get short amounts of ice time irrespective, Max Stewart is probably more adaptable, I feel, to be able to do a role kind of fourth line crash and bang than Carter Hamill, for example. But there's there's ways and means. Cam Hamill is more who I'd sign if you wanted a crash and bang sort of specialist. But hey, he's gonna have some fun in Bristol this year, irrespective, so that'll be good. But this is what Adam Keefe gets. That's his luxury. He's got 6 guys on 2 ways. He's got the opportunity to use them how he sees fit. The guys who will, I have this argument from time to time with people in the elite league about using guys to their skill sets, but also as well, you got to do what the coach tells you. I feel that using guys outside of their skill set isn't setting them up to win. I feel that's a problem, but let's see what happens with it. For me, some of the 2-way bits and pieces. I feel Archie Salisbury's got a real opportunity here with Glasgow. Lower end team, not much is expected of them. And his opportunity to kind of get a look in and get some ice time, I think there should hopefully bode really well for him, rather than in Sheffield and Belfast, where your 2-way, your prospect roster is much heavier, because if there's fewer spaces, it's harder to stand out. Now, Aaron Fox has said he's going to rotate around his 2 ways, but again, it's going to depend massively on what the needs of the roster are. Like, if all your D stay healthy, then you're not going to get tons of guys. You're not going to get tons of your D-men coming up. If you're lacking a bit of speed, well, that opens the door for Morgan Clark-Pizzo. If you're wanting size, if you need a bit of size, that opens the door for Ivan Björkley-Nordstrom. Then it's a mishmash. It's a mishmash of the stuff. I mean, it's all kind of, you need to kind of see where the chips fall. MK roster is, I believe, completed apart from some under 18 2-way signings. Yeah, of course, the news that the disco has stopped for now. Liam Stewart not re-signing at the moment anywhere at all initially, but we'll see what happens with that. We might get an announcement out of him in the not too distant future, hopefully. Just having a quick squeeze. Messages flying around. No, nothing extra in the immediacy that I can see, apart from Alicia Potts re-signing for the Solihull Vixens. There's an interesting one there that came out in the last hour from Jake Bricknell. Some thoughts actually from the Wildcats from Jake Bricknell. I'm excited to join the Wildcats. When I expressed an interest in returning to the UK, I was introduced to Aaron, who came to the green pretty quickly. When I was in the UK before, it was one of my favourite years in hockey. I have no doubt Swindon will be the same. Someone has clearly not looked at the differences between Swindon and Manchester on that front, but fair play to the man. I describe my game as a powerful with an offensive upside. I like to get engaged in the game physically and use my hockey IQ to set up my teammates. That feels much more like a Tower replacement than a Luwele replacement in the immediacy. I also think my shot is my biggest strength, so maybe he is the Luwele replacement. I'm pumped to have an amazing season. I can't wait to meet you all at the Link Centre. So saying all the right things, which is really useful. But if he's much more of a physical guy who likes to set things up, that speaks to me of him being the Colby Tower replacement. Do you then potentially play him in the centre? Given that remains to be seen. If his shot is his strength, then that will obviously help. not completely relying on Nella Malazinski if your scoring is huge. If you're Swindon, somebody with a bit of a physical presence to them as well. Like there's someone mentioned in the chat earlier, that's big. Swindon need to be more physical in general. I'd argue, but we will see. We'll see how Swindon revert to type. So yeah, under 70 points then. If he gets 69 points and we're having this conversation in April, what do we do? I think, what was it last year? I think it was the year Scott McKenzie where I sort of said about how the fact that, that nobody, I was talking about the fact that he'd never gotten over 100 points, and he messaged me going, "Got 99 last year," and I was like, sorry. But no, I think given what we've seen of him, I'd be saying 70 to 80. It doesn't feel like a 100-point guy in the immediacy. But I think 70 or 80, I think, feels reasonable as a starting point. Then again, he might, his shot might be terrible, and he might just only hit the plexi. He might turn up and be the best sniper the league's ever seen. So we will see. We will see on that front. Also, I'm interested as to see whether, if they play him on the wing, who does he fit with if he goes on the wing? Because if he ends up working really well with Nell, whereas I don't think Malazinski works as well without Nell, do you then play a line that's literally the most loaded top line in the division of Malazinski, Nell and Bricknell? Which would be hilarious. That would be the I'm rolling two lines for the remainder of this game's levels worth of line matching there from Aaron Nell. But under 70 points, like I said, I feel he's got. Let's say 80. I'll go for 80 on him. Like I said, I think for me the head scratching thing is how he ended up playing for 4 teams last year. If I'm asking him, that's my first question, because he was traded, and he was traded once and waived 3 times in the ECHL, and that might have just been purely fit. It might have been guys on NHL contracts being moved around and there just not being space. Could be a bunch of different reasons. But somebody playing for 4 teams in a season in the same league, there is not an alarm bell. Not an alarm bell, but it does. The light bulb goes on to ask the question. Billing and the other import. Yeah. No, I mean, that's probably fair. That's fair, bet. Yeah, that's fair, Joe. The Glenn Billinger, who might have been the most underrated player last year, I think, outside of Swindon. Swindon fans all love him. In that front. But I thought Billing had a very, very good year. I don't think he had the best of playoffs. But I think on the balance of the year, I think Billing has probably not gotten the credit he deserves for last season. Call a £1 a call for exact points, and money goes to charity. I don't gamble for money at the best of times. Now he's clearly watching because he sent me the. So Ben Callahan's watching me on the TV, so he sent me the message in chat, the Wildcats press officer. Nell with Malazinski, Billing with Bricknell, start with the pairs, and work out the third in pre-season. You're on the TV and I can't message in the chat. Hi, Ben. Worked his way around it by just messaging me directly on Facebook instead. Fair play. Yeah, I think that sounds like the most sensible thing to do in the immediacy. Where does Picozzi fit into that equation? Will obviously is the first question that occurs to me. Spell forward will help out Griff as a physical presence for MK and much needed on the blue line, which should help us out in smaller rinks. Yeah, very, very much so. Like Chris Necrosevisis, for Solon, like the ability he has to be able to, just by his sheer size, to do things in Gosport is really, really big. Still has one of the bizarrest skating actions I've ever seen in my life, but he at home for home games he's just brilliant about just using his size very, very well. So in those smaller rinks like Slough, like Dumfries, he will hopefully that will kind of help. And then you can kind of shuffle things around and use the two of them potentially as a shutdown pairing if you needed to. Not ideal. Work smarter, not harder, is the message I've had from Ben Callahan about messaging me on Facebook. Either way, we've been going for about an hour and a quarter. I will say, I'll shout like last call. So questions, comments, thoughts, feelings, anything you want to stick in the chat for us to chat about before the end, do that now. Right. Whilst you lot are putting in your final thoughts about bits and pieces, what we're going to do going forward. So the plan is, he says pulling up the calendar. So we are now at the 31st of July. So August starts tomorrow. The plan is that we will do our sort of end of we will stream again the last Wednesday of August, which is the weekend before pre-season. So that's the week before pre-season. So it'll be Wednesday, the 28th of August, will be the August off-season special / the kind of pre-season look at bits and pieces as pre-season begins. After that point, we will be back to weekly shows. So the 28th of August will be the end of our kind of monthly bit. And then after that point, Wednesday night, 8 p.m, every week, rolling through bits and pieces is how we're going to do it. From there, I've got a holiday in August, so I'll be away for at least a week anyhow. And then I'll be sort of catching up from having been away for a chunk of time. And so the 28th is the logical place for me in my head to come back. Of course, if something drastic happens, we will pop up before then. But the 28th is going to be the end of off-season, look at pre-season and start getting ready to kind of rock and roll. And then, of course, it will all begin again. And we are very, very nearly there. The end of the off-season is coming, like I say. New hockey stories coming as well. Lots of good stuff. And looking forward to get rocking and rolling. I don't know about you. A bit of weird off-season. And I think the Basingstoke situation has obviously kind of played into that. But the Israelites wandered the desert for 40 years. I can live with 2. And then hopefully next year, back to it. To rock and roll. And do it that way. So yeah, let's get back to it. So that's what we'll do. No hockey for me when I'm in Vienna. Pre-season won't have started yet, unfortunately, for the Capitals or anything like that. I'm going to the football when I'm over there, so that'll be interesting. Never been to football in Austria. I've obviously watched a fair bit of Austrian football on the telly over the years, but we'll be at an actual live game, and then it'll be hockey, and more hockey. I think is the short version on that. Looking forward to it as well. Looking forward to getting. Looking forward to trying, seeing some different teams. Trying and doing a bit of what I did last year. Trying to see as many different teams as possible. I think, off the top of my head, it was 31 different teams across the space of the year. And like I say, when I figure out my where my excursion potentially is going to be, then we'll hopefully be able to add some different ones into that as well. Certainly my thing is I want to try and get to North 1 and North 2 this year. South 1 and South 2 are on my doorstep in the form of Gosport, so I can kind of cheat there. Getting a shirt. Will I get a shirt when I'm over there? Yes is probably the answer. My son has gotten into football because he's been doing football during term time at the weekends. He quite likes his football. He's sort of adopted Hertha Berlin at the moment because I bought him a Hertha Berlin t-shirt when I was in Berlin back in March. But we've talked about. And also the thing actually of him is like he loves running around, he loves being energetic, and he likes playing his football. So football shirts, he's got his own little sort of football shirt collection, and we sort of accumulated from having spent very little money, essentially, mostly thanks to eBay, or eBay and classic football shirts and their sort of clearance section. But I think if we're going to a game over there, we're going to try and get either if we're going to an Austria Vienna game, we'll try and get an Austria Vienna shirt, or we'll try and get just an Austrian national team shirt. Post the Euros, they might be on the cheap, so we'll go and have a look. But certainly we'll be getting if I'm going to an Austria Vienna game, I will certainly be picking up a souvenir of some description, and we'll see what takes the boys fancy when he's over there. In terms of hockey, I have a Vienna Capitals shirt alredy, so I don't need another one right now on that front. But always on the hunt is the trick. Always on the hunt for fun things. Any more then? Definitely last call, as it were, on that one. If anything else anybody wants to get out of their system before we leave you. And July disappears back into the distance, because tomorrow's August and hockey is back in August, and that's pretty awesome. Looking forward to that. I really must buy my ticket for the Swindon Telford game. The Austrian national shirts are always cheap on Amazon. I've got home and away from 2022. I think there's something to be said, James, about buying them there. Like, I know that sounds like, obviously there are cheap ways of doing it, but certainly for me, I like getting stuff when I go. So like when I was in Dumfries, I got a Queen of the South shirt. I got one for me and I got one for the boy. So the boy has a Queen's shirt from Dumfries. We didn't order it over the internet, kind of thing. And he's worn that to his football thing. And of course, I'm based in Southampton, so all the kids either turn up in Southampton shirts or like Messi and Ronaldo shirts. And then there's my kid running around in his like Queen of the South shirt. It's like, and it is deliberate, so we can find him amongst the group. But it is just quite funny with all these kids, like the neon pink Inter Miami Messi kit, and then there's Nathan with like the Scottish 3rd Division shirt on, which people who know me well will know is exactly the sort of levels worth of niche nonsense that I like to buy into. So, right, there doesn't appear to be any more for any more, so we will call it there. BannersOnTheWall.wordpress.com, your number one source for all things related to the NIHL. Tons and tons of content from the last 13 years on there. Last year's Banners on the Road series, it will become the 24-25's Banners on the Road series, in-depth views from all of the games that I go to, and our hockey story series as well. Long-form pieces of content from the 19th century up to the present day, behind the Iron Curtain, into World War II and beyond. Do make sure that you check out the latest piece in Hockey Stories, which was with Dante Abercrombie, the head coach of the Tennessee State University Tigers, as well as all the other bits and pieces as I kind of cover my coverage of the National Ice Hockey League structure for the National, as well as Division 1 and Division 2, North and South. Elsewhere on the website as well, you can check out the back catalogue of the RBATW podcast and our free-to-download tabletop ice hockey game, Dice Hockey, that you can play with a few bits and pieces from around your house. Free to download. All I ask is that if you do download it and you enjoy it, please do consider chucking a small donation towards Parkinson's UK. My dad has Parkinson's. He has Parkinson's dementia into the bargain, and it sucks. And we any money we can raise for that to help towards a cure is brilliant on that front. But like I say, 13 years worth of content of all kinds of great stuff to check over at bannersonthewall.wordpress.com. Facebook.com/bannersonthewall is the Facebook page if you like getting your news through your Facebook feed. Everything goes onto the website, goes onto the YouTube channel, goes onto there as well, so make sure you go hit the like button there. Twitter, X, whatever we're calling it now, is @BannersOTW. That's the best place to keep up with me and the sort of rolling commentary of everything that kind of goes on over there. So make sure to follow us there if you don't already. And of course, you're watching us live on YouTube, the BOTW YouTube channel. Head down below, because not only are all the links to all of our social media and bits and pieces in the description, hit the subscribe button, hit the like button on the video, hit that notification bell, so anytime we go live or any new video comes up, you are the first to know about it. You've got interviews, you've got match reports, you've got all kinds of crazy stuff here from the last few years. And of course, Wednesday night, 8 p.m. throughout the NIHL season, the first and the best live show to cover all things across all 5 divisions in the NIHL. That's here on the What's Current stream, and we thank you for joining us here on this Wednesday evening. July is done. The birthdays in this house are done, and we are edging ever closer towards the 24-25 season. The beer bottle that is still waiting for its destiny to be decided is still there in the corner, and it looks like it's not going to be opened in 24-25. It's going to have another year on the shelf. So whilst it sits there, it's time for all of us to go wandering once again. Hockey is back in August, my friends, and I look forward to sharing some of it with you. We will join you back here Wednesday the 28th of August at 8 p.m. for the end of our monthly off-season specials, because the cycle begins again, and I'm looking forward to doing it all with you. Be happy, and if you can't be happy, then wherever you are, please, please, please do be safe. Love to everybody in Southport, and shove all of the racist bastards who are causing problems up there. As my friend Scotty would say, take care of yourself and somebody else. For bannersonthewall.wordpress.com, this is Anthony Russell saying stay safe, and so long till next time. Enjoy your August. We'll see you at the rink before too long. Have a good evening, everyone.